already had a little quick nosy around the endgame file for this experiment, and unfortunately there is a team that has graced the Premier League once upon a time that's now in Tier 6. Yes, there's also a team I'm quite pleased to see do reasonably well in all this, reducing the clubs, making sure only one club can be in each city has benefited some, and some have still collapsed despite of that. But anyway, we'll get to 35 years in a moment. First 20 years' time, or 20 complete seasons, I should say, as we join in June 2043 to see how the London, Liverpool, Manchester trifecta is getting on. And the answer is, there's a new name in the party. Yes, it took 7 years for anyone else to win a Premier League title in former Newcastle back in 29-30. But it did revert to type after that, Manchester, Liverpool, London, rotating through a trio of Liverpool victories. Manchester hasn't actually won it in a while now because Newcastle, London, Liverpool, Newcastle again are the last 4. In fact, it has been 10 seasons since a Manchester victory, which is quite surprising. You can also see here in the Premier League, Lincoln City being relegated, but in the Premier League. There's also MK Dons, which, yeah, that's going to annoy some people, but at least they're being relegated, folks. Stoke down as well. Hull surviving, Leeds, Leicester, West Brom, Luton, Sheffield, Brighton. The usual suspects around, but Sunderland up and doing well, it seems, in the Conference League. And Southampton has joined. In fact, in this season, it almost looks like Southampton's part of a Big Five because it is a quite tightly contested season with Birmingham a little bit more off the pace with Bournemouth and Sunderland on the 60s mark. But we'll just flick through and see. This is where we left things off. Admittedly, with Sunderland in 6th at that point in time as well, and West Brom for that matter, and MK Dons similarly being relegated at the same time. Lincoln had won that particular championship and then has been immediately relegated with, I think, the other 2 promoted teams, actually. That's the exact 3 straight back down again. But Wigan back in the Premier League, albeit briefly. Birmingham down in 9th, but UEL is obviously a European victory. I was London the victors there. Liverpool the following year, 9 teams in Europe. West Brom being relegated. Having gotten Europa League football 2 years prior, West Brom relegated. That's rough. Sunderland and Southampton up there. Bournemouth as well. I think we looked at them last time round and they had a tycoon takeover. No, actually, they'd done well. All of their own regard. There is a consortium takeover in 25, but that's not a tycoon takeover. It's not like a huge amount of money is going to be pumped in there. So they've just done relatively well of their own regard here. Mike Mannion in charge of them. We'll do managers in a moment. Lincoln back up and straight back down again. Reading back in the Premier League. Again, albeit briefly. Sheffield presumably with a Carabao Cup victory there to boot. But Bournemouth again in 5th. Southampton up there in 7th. In fact, that almost looks like a big 7. Interesting. You reduce the number of teams from a big 6 and it makes a big 7. Leeds interrupting that, admittedly this time with Sunderland tagging along in 9th. Sheffield having got presumably a Carabao Cup victory, then get a Conference League victory and finish 17th. Surviving, wait, what have they actually survived on? Head to head, Sheffield have been prevented from relegation by virtue of having the head-to-head record on Coventry, because same points, same goal difference, same goals scored and against. So it went on head-to-head. Derby back up again in the Premier League. Nice to see former Premier League teams popping back up again. Yeah, we'll get to the one. And there's Portsmouth up in the Premier League, just to help complete the set, or effectively. We're just missing Bolton, I think, although they may have done it already. Sheffield bouncing back from their near relegation. Lincoln up and staying up. As a former resident of the area, nice to see that. I've been to 2 of their player finals. They lost both of them. I felt cursed. And then they lost another one without me. But staying up again in 17th there. Yes, they might be the team I was pleased to see do well. Well, relatively well. Norwich down is a bit of a surprise, considering the experiment. Anyway, same kind of teams. London down in 7th is a surprise. Manchester down in 5th. Actually, this is a very topsy-turvy year. Liverpool running away with it. But Newcastle, Southampton, Bournemouth, top 4. Manchester getting UCL on the virtue of the coefficient points, I think. Slightly reverting to type the year after, but this is the first, or the second, I should say, of the Newcastle wins. Southampton in 3rd again, Bournemouth in 6th, Sunderland 7th. It is tightly contested, that top end again, but Coventry, Hull, Reading down, Lincoln up in 12th, and then relegated. West Brom and Cardiff down. There's another former Premier League team. Back down again, but London back on top, the top 3 back to top 3 with Bournemouth and Newcastle. Southampton getting Champions League again, making a bit of consistency. Norwich are already back in 11th there, having been promoted, just because they threw me off seeing them in the UEL. This is what I mean. You'd expect a team like Norwich to capitalise on the reduction of particularly the London teams in the Premier League as one of the better championship sides. Sunderland doing it relatively well, obviously year on year at this point. But Burnley, Reading and Nottingham down again. Leeds United with UEL, so that's an FA Cup or Conference League victory. On the basis that Sunderland had Europa League the previous year, I'm going to say that's a Conference League victory for Leeds. having had it the previous year. But we'll go check that later on. And of course, this is the most recent season, seeing Stoke, MK Dons and Lincoln, having been relegated 2 years prior, come straight back up again and then be relegated immediately again. Norwich in 9th. They're sticking around maybe a little bit longer this time. Impressive they scored 53 and conceded 53. Back on the dot. But we'll have a flick through the other leagues here in the 20s. Wrexham and Macclesfield, 8th and 9th. I believe Macclesfield are already in the Championship as of the last video. And yes, they have somewhat yo-yoed since. No, tell a lie. They had made the... Macclesfield had made the Championship once before, literally like the season before, the one we checked in on. But they made their way back again and have yo-yoed since, and this actually is the first time they've stayed up the previous season, and then they've done even better this season. So we could see our first Tier 6 to the Premier League in Macclesfield. Bolton in 18th, they're hanging around. York in 19th in the Championship is impressive. Portsmouth here in 15th, hanging around. 2 Wigan. A lot of former Premier League teams are hanging around in the Championship, of course. Reading and Cardiff and Nottingham from 5th being promoted. Stockport going up to the Championship. Oxford back in League One. Boston there. Maidstone, Oldham in League One. Blythe Spartans being relegated along with Scarborough. They've made their way up here. Eastleigh in 7th. And in League 2, we have Cambridge, Grimsby, Bradford and Stevenage. That's a very just regular League 2 promotion set. Telford in 5th. I mean, Bury in 9th is nice. The fact they're a league team again. But I'm not going to lie, that's a very standard-looking League 2 almost. Or just a bunch of teams that maybe Vanarama North, obviously inherited League 2 in the first place for the most part, but not a lot of surprises there. Thankfully, no accidental incursions up to League 2 from teams that I should have deleted but decided against doing for the sake of time. I've seen the big casualty. Huddersfield Town being relegated from the Vanarama National League. Former Premier League wasn't the one I was talking about. They were relegated from the Championship in the last video we saw. 2 years later, relegated from League 1, immediately re-promoted, relegated again in 39-40, and then relegated again immediately from League 2 in 40-41. Survived 1 year, and then have been relegated again. Have they had a problem? Interesting they've turned semi-professional and then professional twice in 2 months there. In fact, they've had youth facilities upgraded. They won the FA Trophy, just for fun. So they failed Sky Bet League 1 financial fair play regulations in 2034 and went into administration, scrapped the youth setup there, and then built it back up again since. The weird thing is, it did take them 6 years to get relegated again, because that was the original relegation and then promotion. But it's not like the administration immediately killed them. I mean, it's all well and good having fierce rivalries with this lot, but you're not going to meet them ever again, are you? They still exist, by the way. They just don't. And yes, I'm sure fans of many of the teams in Vanarama National North and South would have hoped maybe their teams would have benefited a little bit more. But no, a lot of them kind of stay roughly as they were. Yeovil being re-promoted from Tier 6 is a Tier 5, went the wrong way there. And Vanarama South Weymouth being promoted. And Swinton Supermarine have actually stuck around somewhat annoyingly, but thankfully they have stayed in Tier 6. And I can already see on the past winners list, new faces, I should say, a new face. Newcastle failed at the Puskás Arena against Manchester in 2035-36, but 2 victories since, both against Barcelona, weirdly. Liverpool with 3 victories, in fact, in that time, Barcelona and then Milan. Actually, nice to see one that isn't PSG, Spanish or English win. Still no German winners in this period, weirdly. As for the Europa League, we left things on with a rhyme, but Atletico Madrid, Bournemouth with a victory. I don't think we spotted that one when we flicked through them. Sunderland with a second place, Southampton, Bournemouth with another Europa League. Is Emery in charge of them at that point? Köln, Valencia, Dortmund, Birmingham, we did recognise. And Metz versus Norwich as a runner-up at the Nottingham Community Arena. Interesting choice of venue, built in 2025. One of the finals was done in Georgia. That was a hell of a journey for the Bournemouth fans, I imagine, but at least they won it. Inter versus Sunderland is a hilarious final. I've only just noticed actually that Southampton beat Birmingham. Sunderland have been to 2 and lost both. And as for the Conference League, Sunderland have been to 2 of these as well and lost both of them. Well, I mean, as a Newcastle fan, I should be enjoying this, but I don't really care for rivalries all that much, but unfortunate. But yes, there's the Leeds victory over Köln at the Thierry Henry Park in Nantes. Sorry, it's not even where Nantes play. Khephren Thuram is managing them. It also was built in 2025. Armenia hosted the Sheffield-Napoli final, which Sheffield won. And also shout out to Dunajska Streda for getting to a final of a European competition. Well done to the Slovakian team there. As for recent winners of the FA Cup, we left things off in London. Birmingham had one, Bournemouth have had one, Birmingham have had a second one, and then Newcastle 2. So it is starting to vary a little bit. Luton still the most surprising of the batch. Bournemouth obviously now technically a top 6 team regularly, so the Luton victory does remain the only outsider there. And as for the Carabao Cup, Sunderland, realistically the only outsider along with Sheffield, which I think again we saw was backed up with the Conference League victory, so made the most of that one. And of course we left things off in 2033 last time out, and whilst it doesn't matter all that much, I always like to have a look at the international tournaments, and as of the 2034 World Cup, if my maths is correct, 68 years of hurt was finally ended. They had a Euros win before this, but this is the first World Cup win for England against Colombia in the final, who had a decent enough run beating Argentina and Italy along the way. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a fairly cathartic victory, having beaten Germany and Portugal along the way for England. Long-term nemesis there. Unfortunately, England made the final of the following World Cup and lost it to Mexico on penalties, of course. But they beat Portugal once again, actually won a penalty shootout. They almost basically Portugal their way to the final. Penalties 1-0, 1-0, and then 0-0. And would have been a penalty win had they done so. But Mexico beat Brazil 7-1, then Argentina. Sure. And England made 3 finals in a row and then lost that one as well, losing to Spain 3-1 in the 2042, having made their way past Brazil 4-1. That was, the toughest journey of the lot. Extra time 2-0 versus Ghana and 3-2 against Ukraine, then losing to Spain. Saudi Arabia and Iran with round of 16 appearances, though, in the 2042 one. Reigning champions Mexico out in the round of 16. And of course, there would have been 2 Euro championships as well. France beat England in the 2028 one. Romania appearing in the second round. The biggest surprise there, I suspect. And, sorry, does England just make every tournament final and then lose most of them? Because Turkey have done that one. I've no idea if you're supposed to pronounce the new version of it any differently, but Turkey. England with a fairly rough run through there. Belgium, Germany, Netherlands. And having been to literally all of the finals in the European Championships, only winning the first one in 2024, they also win the 2041 against Portugal, having Portugal their way through it, beating Germany on penalties, France 1-0, Croatia 1-0, and then Portugal themselves 1-0. Croatia versus Scotland in the quarter-final, that's fun. And of course 2044 has not been hosted yet. So in the Premier League, manager-wise, there is only one person still there 20 seasons in, and that is Eddie Howe at Newcastle. That's a thing. That's a thing that is happening. Philippe Clement at Southampton, Kuka at Wolves, João Mario at Norwich has been there for 1,600 days. Roberto De Zerbi at London, 60% win rate. That's at least 4 years, I think. There, Edgar at Liverpool. Thomas Tuchel is still managing 20 years' time for Birmingham. Harry Green for Sheffield. Matt Gray for West Brom. We saw Mike Maignan at Bournemouth. Samuel Edozie at Brighton. Cameron Jerome at Luton. Musgrove at Hull, Miguel Angel Ramirez at Leicester, Joe Lolly at Sunderland, and Jeff Gibson at Leeds. There are absences from this. That is because Luis Enrique retired from management at the end of this season, in fact. No one's ever been sacked at Manchester. Pep just left, as did Conte, and now Luis Enrique has just retired. Jurgen Klopp straight up retired from management in 2040. That's what happened there. And Edgar took over, current Almeria player, judging by his history. He is very good. And similarly, it took 19 years for Arteta to be sacked in 2039. That presumably was the season when London didn't look that good. I think they finished 7th. But shout out to Eddie Howe, literally still there. At the age of 65, still there. Just flicking through fun ones and depressing ones in the form of Rico Lewis at Burnley. The fact we've gone that far, even he's managing. But Regan Paul at Mansfield, I recognise. Obviously, John Joe Kenny at Blackburn as well. Moritz now at Plymouth. Che Adams managing Bristol. Angus Gunn managing Boston. Sam Haberham's up to Crewe. He was a lot further down the pyramid then. Ben Goffrey managing Eastleigh. Brandon Williams in charge of Newport. That's fun. Callum Wilson's at Telford now. Jack Black, a new gen manager. Fun to imagine though. In charge of Horrington. Just because it's fun to look through this one. Southgate lasted till 2026. We saw that Sean Dyche had taken over when we looked at England before. I did not notice in 2033, if we clicked on England at all, that Stephen Gerrard was in charge. It makes sense, I suppose. And then Jocelyn Gorvinek. Yep, that's the logical decision. Current Rhyme manager, I think. He's currently Mehmet Ali. Built himself up as a manager. But yes, the one in between that, 2 years, 5 days, resigned, is Callum Chambers. Is that Callum Chambers? He won the Euros as manager of England. Callum Chambers, dear God, is unbelievable. He's managing Real Madrid. 20 motivating, 20 people management, 17, 15, 16 in the other managing roles. Yeah, he's quite good. He was in charge of Stockport County 10 years ago when we had a look. He has quite a prolific run through, actually. Torquay, Bradford, Wickham, Stockport, Norwich for 3 years, Milan for 2, then England, then to Leverkusen for a couple, and now Real Madrid, 20 defending coaching as well, with solid tactical and technical. He's a fantastic manager. What? I love it. I love it when random people just become insane managers in the future. This is low-key my favourite part of Football Manager. But we need to go to the end point, 2035. This will be a quicker run through because obviously everyone's kind of already sorted themselves out by now. We left things off, of course, at the end of 2043 season with Newcastle in charge of that particular league. Liverpool return, Norwich Conference League, Luton, Nottingham, Cardiff down. Fantastically spread out European choices as Birmingham from 10th get Conference League, presumably Cowan Bell, and Sheffield presumably FA Cup from 13th. Wigan back down again. Liverpool on top once again. Newcastle return to the top. Lincoln back in the Premier League in 13th. Sheffield once again getting European football by virtue of winning the competition they're in, I think, because that's a Champions League appearance off the back of last year's Europa League. You can sort of see the usual suspects are these 8 now, although Bournemouth failed that year, with Sheffield getting Conference League football through the league, obviously not succeeding in the Champions League. Lincoln survived, Derby up and surviving. Wolves down, that might be their first relegation. That was their first relegation. It's not been fun since, although they've stabilised the last couple. We'll keep an eye on that one. Lincoln down, unfortunately, that year, though, along with Ipswich, who came up. But Derby surviving once again. Sheffield from 10th, UEL. They had Conference League that year. I think they've gone and won that again. Sheffield becoming the masters of winning the European competitions. London on top. Bournemouth as a Premier League victory on goal difference over Manchester. 1 point from Newcastle too. That's a fun one. Southampton, Champions League from 12th implies Europa League. Liverpool 11th, UEL. Did they have Conference League the year before? They did. Okay, so that's what that is. 2 teams through the league implies an FA Cup win from the top 5, but MK Dons Derby unfortunately relegated again. Wolves up, survived that one, then down again. Norwich hanging around, but yeah, usual suspects top 8, Sheffield kind of near, London on top. Newcastle winning that one, Lincoln up and staying up, Derby down again. Norwich close to it. Leeds getting Europa League football. We had Conference League the year before. Southampton, I think they went and won it. Lincoln getting Europa League football in 2052. Norwich down, Wolves down, Hull down. MK Dons up and surviving. Reading up and surviving though. Like to see that one. Lincoln in 7th. Fascinating. Liverpool on top. Lincoln in 17th. They struggled with Europe, it seems. Brighton back up in the places. Newcastle from Bournemouth as a top 2. The trifecta is officially broken. They are still there in 3rd, 4th, 5th, but Newcastle and Bournemouth definitely a new kind of big 5. Although Southampton win the following year. Lincoln up, survived. MK Dons up and survived, of course. Reading still up there as well. Birmingham in 10th, no, nothing for them. Leeds up again in 7th though. Lincoln in 12th. They're hanging around actually. Derby stayed up too. Hull in 10th. This is a bit topsy-turvy for this one, but Manchester on top. Twice in a row, in fact. Lincoln in 10th. They're making a go of it this time round. That's our MK Dons, unfortunately for people who don't like them. Derby County in 7th. European football comes back to Pride Park, I assume, as of 2056. You're waiting a while. Newcastle on top. Lincoln, well, it was fun while it lasted, although Derby County remain. And Preston make an appearance in the top division, albeit briefly. And Derby County get Europa League football, presumably off the back of winning the Conference League as of the most recent season. So Derby County, Derby gets some fun at last at the very, very end. Birmingham 16th, actually. We'll be very close to seeing one of the, what I was going to predict to be a big 5, be relegated there. Only 3 points safe. Who knows what will happen if we simulated a couple more seasons. Just while we're here, I'll have a look at the manager situation. Lavia is in charge of Bournemouth. Leandro Barreiro's in charge of Liverpool. Callum Chambers has made his way to London, which of course, formerly Arsenal. That's fun. He's only been in charge 20 days. Marquinhos, yep, that one, in charge of Manchester. And then just someone called Jan in charge of MK Dons. Joe Loy's in charge of Newcastle. Obviously, Howe presumably retired at the end of 2048. So lasted 5 more years after us. Then Marquinhos took over, left. Joe Stimson, new gen, that makes sense. And then Edgar, who we saw previously. All of them just left. No one was ever fired at Newcastle. Notable absence there was Liverpool from the manager list. So, yeah, so last time we looked, Edgar was there. Not quite as fun for the people who took over, which was Wes Foderingham, sacked after 3 years. Pascal Gross, sacked after 1 year. Barreiro, first stint, sacked after 1 year. Marcelli, D. Musgrave, and then Barreiro again. We saw Luis Enrique retire. Then it was De Zerbi who took over, then was sacked. Callum Chambers took over them. Matty Smith, and then Marquinhos. But flicking through the other leagues, in 2058, we do see Lincoln get promoted as champions. That's nice. Peterborough up in 8th there. I see Tranmere up in 5th, of course. Nottingham down in 11th. Macclesfield remain in 20th. No appearances in the Premier League for them in the end. But yeah, 17 years or 18 years in the Championship, consistent. Bolton, I don't know if they popped up early on. I think they might have done, but yes. A little bit of yo-yo, but mostly Championship for them. Would have liked to have seen them make a little bit more of a go of it. Blackburn just survived relegation there. Again, I would like to see maybe them make a little bit more of a go of it. Blythe Spartans get promoted along with Wrexham and Southend. This is what we like to see. Kidderminster Harriers up in League One. They were in the Vanarama North, I presume, 15 years ago. What happened with them? They were promoted from the Vanarama National League North as of the previous check-in. Promoted 2 years later. Decade in League 2, effectively, and then just recently re-promoted and surviving. Good work from Kidderminster Harriers. In that time, Bury up in League 1, of course, that's only one promotion since the last time we checked in, but Lewis Scarborough being relegated again, Boston and Swansea down to League 2. Gillingham, Woking, Swindon and Telford. Again, a fairly bog-standard set, although Woking and Telford, I suppose. Huddersfield are in League 2. So when we saw them last, they were in the Vanarama National League, being relegated to Tier 6. 2 years, re-promoted. 2 years, promoted. 2 years, promoted. 2 years, relegated, promoted, relegated, promoted, relegated, since. So they've stabilised in League 2, have Huddersfield. Not quite the total collapse. Well, as Lincoln actually get promoted out of the Championship as well, it's not so much fun for the other Lincolnshire teams as both Grimsby and Scunthorpe get relegated, and as did Boston from League 1. What a tale it was for Lincolnshire in 2058. Oxford are in the Vanarama National League. They were in the Championship for a long while. Oh dear. Things have not gone well for Oxford. Relegated from the Championship in 2041, they were in League 1 when we last looked in. Relegated from there in 2046. Relegated from the League 2 in 51. And they've been in Vanarama ever since. Oh, I've just seen the fight. I've just seen what 1 point separated Cambridge from Oxford in the Vanarama National League. That's a reborn rivalry. Good Lord. Cheltenham in Vanarama as well, along with Doncaster. Oh dear. As for the Vanarama National League North, Gainsborough, the only Lincolnshire team to have not been promoted or relegated. And then we get to the Vanarama National League South, where Weston-super-Mare have been promoted over Aldershot. But this is where the story is. I'll give you a moment to notice it, but yes, Swindon Supermarines still here, by the way, but they're still here underneath Portsmouth. Just sort of having a fun time in the Championship. Last time we checked in, they had been recently re-promoted to the Premier League, we saw as of 2038 in the 20-year check-in. 1 year in the Premier League, long-term Championship, followed by a relegation in 2050, followed by another relegation in 53, and then another relegation in 55, and then another one last year, or the year before last. Yeah, 3 relegations in 4 seasons. There's a story. They are professional status now. Yeah, their landmarks page is carnage. Youth facilities upgraded, sold, scrapped, raised to Category 3. I can't make head nor tail of it. There's a failed Tycoon takeover bid in 2055, which, yeah. Scrapped, turned professional. Youth facilities upgraded, scrapped, sold, semi-professional, scrapped, youth setup, scrapped again, somehow, professional, upgraded, sold, scrapped, raised to Category 3. Yeah, there's a lot of turning semi-professional, selling facilities, category ratings being dropped. They were somehow semi-professional in League 2. In fact, they were semi-professional as of being relegated from League 1 there. But I suspect, here's your promotion from the Sky Bet Championship. They had undersoil heating installed. Then relegated. Facilities upgraded at that point, upon which they failed the Championship financial fair play regulations twice. Not relegated there, though. Relegated in 2050. Facilities scrapped. It's not even like there's administration. It just collapsed. Apologies to the Pompey fans. Mets, the most recent winners of the Champions League, though. Strasbourg are in there for good measure. Bournemouth have won a Champions League 2 in 2053. That's that. We'll talk about Strasbourg in a minute. In the Pep Guardiola Stadium, by the way. Manchester, that's happened. Sheffield did indeed win another Europa League. Birmingham won one there as well. Southampton, Birmingham again. Liverpool recently. Derby as a runner-up to Liverpool. Unfortunate. Sunderland have made 3 more finals and not won any of them. Although admittedly, Southampton have done that twice. But they have won one against Sunderland. Thankfully, they haven't made any more Europa League appearances, but Derby County did win that at the Stanley Matthews Arena in Leicester, ironically where the previous winner came from. In the form of Leicester, Hertha Berlin back as well, Anderlecht. Southampton have won there as well as Liverpool and Sheffield, as we identified, along with Birmingham too, for good measure. Just shout out, by the way, to the Friends Arena. Real place. But yes, the Stanley Matthews Arena, built in 2024. Again, nobody actually plays there. I have a feeling these are the set of stadiums that might be being built for continental purposes, or international purposes, I should say. Because the Thierry Henry Park, of course, we've already looked at. I think there might be like a Euros that's across Europe where these are being built for. As for the FA Cup, still mostly the usual suspects if we now include Bournemouth as the usual suspects. Southampton with a couple, although they've been edging closer to the top of late too. In fact, I think they won a Premier League, did they not? And Sunderland. But get one there. Or actually 2, because that'll be the first one since we last checked. As for the Carabao Cup, this is actually the usual suspects. Apart from Derby, of course, we know capitalised on that by winning the Conference League the following year, so it takes a while, but congratulations to Derby County fans, commiserations to the Pompey fans. I know I have both amongst my mutuals, so that's not going to start anything. As for England, Luke Chambers takes over. Great name, Gozy Bromage. Dean Musgrove, Wes Fotheringham, Rico Lewis. Is 53 now, that's depressing. Has managed Atletico, Juventus, England, Metz and Lens, and then Vincent Kompany, who is 72. Currently France manager. He's just running around the internationals, Belgium, England, and now France. They are number 1 in the world rankings. I'm not going to look at them in depth, but it has been Portugal, France, France, and Poland, Belgium, France, or Portugal in the 2044 one. Poland beat Greece. I mean, Poland's run to the final was Denmark, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and then Greece. There was no France in the knockout rounds. Scotland, Wales, Ireland and England all made the knockout round. France were bottom of the group with Portugal, Sweden and Bulgaria. That's what happened there. Norway and Netherlands were in England and Wales's group. Italy were Denmark and Spain, so I knew there was another one missing. Blimey. 2048 was fun, and then the last 2 were fairly more standard. But the thing I kind of wanted to check most of all with the England was the teams. Obviously, the people that tend to play minutes on this page, the ones that are typically out on loan somewhere. So they've not come through there. 3 youth prospects at Lincoln is curious. And they seem to be all right as well. This is a fun potential knock-on effect, but of course, if you remove London from the equation, only give them 1 team, give Manchester 1 team, give Birmingham 1 team, all the prospects that would go to those clubs start to go to other places, particularly obviously the London one. And with London being so centralising, they tend to scoop up people from quite a reasonable distance. People that might otherwise go to Midlands teams like Lincoln or Stoke. Don't know if they count as Midlands, but Southend seem to have a fair few. But in the main actual team, it is mostly London, mostly Manchester, a couple of Newcastle, a couple of Sheffield. And we need to talk about Strasbourg as well, because PSG have been dethroned. They've won the most recent one, but that happened. As have Bayern Munich. They got dethroned very early on. They have not won one in 26 seasons. Although, annoyingly, perhaps more annoyingly, it's Leipzig now. It's been mostly AC Milan in Italy. And then let's go with a few recently, but Spain's the most boring of the lot. It is worth noting, actually, that Newcastle are regarded the most reputable team in the world at this point in time. Also, shout out to Lincoln being effectively 20th, or 19th, actually, as the case may be. I'll take that. But that's it from this experiment. It does create a little bit of a new world order, as you can see from this reputation list. Newcastle, Manchester, Bournemouth, London, Liverpool, Southampton as a top 6. It's a different top 6. Birmingham, the only other one on worldwide status, which kind of tracks when you think about it from what we've seen. I have said it's kind of the usual suspects. It's those 7 and usually one of Sheffield, Sunderland, Leeds. And Derby County actually up there now off the back of a European win on continental status is nice to see. But all in all, I think this experiment has done largely what I expected it to do, which is shake up English football a little bit, but crucially, make things a little bit more interesting with who's getting what. Newcastle capitalising, of course, as I expected them to. Birmingham maybe not quite so much. I don't think they actually even won a Premier League in that entire time. But Bournemouth and Southampton, the surprise capitalisers in all this. Of course, Southampton promoted from the Championship early on, I imagine. And then now making themselves know Sunderland too in all this. Some maybe not keeping it up as much as I thought they would. Brighton, for instance, they had a little bit of early success and then kind of didn't really enter the picture after that point. But there we go, eliminating the so-called spare clubs in this experiment has made a very different world. Some ups for some teams, some downs for others. Again, sorry, fans of those teams, but I have no control over this. Thank you for joining me though. If you enjoyed this, do like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, ta-ra.